Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What's Bruin. I am your host, Chris Nozick, joined by my esteemed co-host, Dominic Tiano. Dom, trade deadline is finally passed. You excited to no longer hear bullshit rumors for the trade deadline?
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm glad it's over for another year, but it still hasn't stopped.
uh we were talking about it just 2 seconds ago before we came here live on air. I want to welcome everyone to What's Brewing. Well, obviously, this show is going to go out as a pod. I do want to thank everyone's patience from last week. Over the last couple of days, we were doing services for my grandmother who passed about a week ago, so I haven't had a chance to get last week's audio cut and uploaded just yet to the channel. But that will be joined by this one very soon. But I do want to thank everyone for their patience on that. But as we mentioned, trade deadline has come and gone. It was Friday at 3 p.m. Our Boston Bruins made two relatively minor moves in comparison to some of the other ones that dropped. In my opinion, I think in this case, what we'll find is the moves that Sweeney didn't make, or the ones that he avoided making, will prove more valuable probably than the ones that he did make. But like we were talking about, we weren't expecting any big massive fireworks. We almost got a couple bigger ones than we were expecting, but for the most part, given the corner, I guess you could say, that Sweeney is kind of positioned himself into, I feel like he performed admirably at the deadline and did enough, but also didn't overextend by too much, if that makes sense.
I think he did what he could do, barring moving Jake DeBrusk or moving Linus Allmark. Um,
I would give him a solid A minus or a B plus on the deadline.
well, I usually don't grade things like this. It's like, we don't know everybody that was available, what talks he was in, who was involved, so it's really hard to give a grade. But I'm intrigued by the peak acquisition.
Yep.
If he can get back to what he was 2 seasons ago, um, should prove to be beneficial. Maroon, we've talked about it all season long. They needed a Milan Lucic replacement. He's about as good as they could do. So, he did what he had to do, at least in those two areas.
Yeah, and I want to be clear. The B plus A minus is, in my opinion, it is more relative to what other teams were gonna. He was never going to be as aggressive as Vegas always seems to be.
No,
So the fact that Noah Hannafin ended up going to Vegas, Vegas was willing to give up a first round pick. They gave up 2 first round picks this year. Let's not forget that. That was something that you aren't able to do. You didn't have
right.
2 first round picks that you could give up. So even if you wanted to include one in Noah Hannafin, you weren't going to be able to uh, do much more than that. And they also had to give up more because the Flyers came in to retain money. And, if you're doing the 2024 5th round pick plus the 1st round pick, now you're just depleting more picks than you already had. And that's the balance that he was weighing. And that's what we were talking about. That's why we weren't expecting much because, barring giving up that 1st round pick, you didn't have a lot of leverage unless you were willing to part ways with Lorai or Poitras, neither of which were guys I feel like they want to jettison out of town, we'll say.
Again, depends on the return. Like, I mean, if you could have given Mason Lorai up and Matthew Poitras up a plus to get Sidney Crosby, and he couldn't close the deal, then he deserves an F,
Sure. But as
right?
far as I'm aware, Crosby wasn't available.
No, I'm just, this is just an example. Without knowing what was available, what discussions he was in, I'm just not going to give him a grade because I don't know everything that he was involved in. Um,
That's why I'm trying to decipher it as based off of who moved, what actually transpired, who went for what. You got Eichel going for a couple firsts, and You got Hannafin going for some players went for dirt bargain cheap prices,
Mm-hmm.
but others went for a lot of capital. So based off of what did move, I feel like Sweeney, obviously there's a lot more talks than we know about. There always will be. It hardly ever comes out later. And there's talk that Allmark nixed a deal based off of geographical locations, which I'm sure we'll get into. So, I don't think it would have been extremely beneficial to break up the goaltending tandem. So I'm glad that one didn't actually go through. But again, depending on what was coming back in the other direction, it's tough to say. But man, Omar looked pretty damn good the other night,
Mm-hmm.
right after the deadline kind of
Yeah.
came off his chest. So again, that's one where I think the value of not having dealt Allmark will end up being better than what we could have gotten in return. But to your point, we won't ever fully know. I feel like based off of what moved, you look at a team like New Jersey, they were desperate for goaltending. They swapped out both of their goaltenders, but they didn't pay enough where I would sit there and go, okay, I'm glad we flipped Allmark to them for comparable picks. A 25 third, which is a 25 second conditional for Jake Allen with 50% retained. And they also got Kokkonen with Vitek Vanacek going the other way in San Jose. Like that doesn't make me sit there and go, yeah, we should have moved Allmark to the Devils based off of what they gave up for goaltending. If that's what they were looking to give up, I'm glad we stayed away from it.
Well, yeah, but I think it would have been more than that. Olmark's on a different level, so I don't think the return for Olmark was going to be uh, ne- anywhere near as bad as the return for Montreal got for Allen.
Right. I'm just saying, if that was the price point New Jersey wanted to dabble around, I'm glad we weren't trying to be their partner in the dance.
Yeah,
it would not have gone over well if that's what we had gotten for Allmark, is something like that. So,
yeah.
To your point, he addressed a couple holes. Maroon is quite simply you replace Milan Lucic and you replace Derek Forbort.
Yeah, and if you go back a month ago, I had written an article about there was concern about whether Forbort would remain full time in the on the roster because of the injuries that he was trying to work through. And I didn't think he would. I don't think the Bruins thought they would, and they found out for sure just before trade deadline. So I was all for getting another defenseman. Um, even if Forbort was in the lineup, I was all for getting another defenseman.
Yeah, I don't think it hurts. And all things considered, I mean, I know some people are kind of balking at the third round pick, but I want to remind y'all it's in 2027, first of all. So that's 4 drafts away. 3 drafts away? 4 drafts away.
Well, let's look at it this way.
7.
Okay, this is the way I look at it. They probably could have got Peak for a 4th round pick. Okay.
In what year?
Same year.
Okay, let's say it's the same year.
Okay. A 4th round in 27. They probably could have got him for that price, but the Bruins wanted to move out of contract. Why? Because there is an NCAA free agent by the name of Colin Graff who is set to sign an NHL contract probably for this year to give him the opportunity to burn a year off his entry-level contract. I bet you 20 of 32 NHL teams are going to be in on him. So the Bruins needed to move a contract. Okay, otherwise they would have been at the 50 limit and wouldn't have been able to do it. So Sweeney says, "Okay, you got to do us a favor and take a contract back because we can't be at the 50 limit." And Columbus says, okay, make it a 3rd-round pick and we'll take the contract.
Right. And the contract that you gave up is basically the same contract. It's just, it's got 2 more years. It's 2 years less. So they are able to look at it in terms of, instead of having peak on the books for 275 for this year and 2 more, we take on the same money, Zboril, at 275.
No, less money.
No,
Zaboril's only $1 million something. It's less than half.
Zboril, I'm pulling it up right now. Pretty sure his AAV was. Oh no, you know what? That was the value of the whole contract.
Yeah,
it was 2.275. So it was 1.137 and change total. Yeah, okay. I don't know why I was thinking they were closer, but either way, I mean they're taking on less AAV and getting out of it.
And getting a better pick.
Yeah.
There's no way the Bruins do that deal without moving a contract out.
Right. And name another contract that you would have wanted them to move on from in this manner. I mean, it's not going to be one of the younger guys who's on an ELC that is worth keeping around. You're not going to do it with a higher end guy like a Brett Harrison or, I mean, I guess you could have done it with like Oscar Steen, but what was the benefit for Carolina or for Columbus rather? With this Borrell contract, it comes off the books at the end of the year, so they're able to just walk away from it. It's a hit, but it's only for this year.
Right.
Let's see. We got Diamond Falcon 1. How did they not address one of the sneaky weaknesses at the faceoff dot? There wasn't a cheap option for a 3rd, 4th liner that can win an important draw. When we lose in the playoffs, that's a big reason why. The only person who was really out there at a solid clip on the faceoff dot would have been Elias Lindholm.
Yep.
I mean,
at a clip that would have made a difference.
Right. I was going to say Middlestat is really the only other, top 3 center who really moved. I mean, Kuznetsov as well, but Kuznetsov, you were never going to be able to afford to bring him in. Middlestat, you've already fleeced Buffalo enough. I think they, learned their lesson. And by the way, you weren't matching Bowen Byram.
No.
And so as far as I'm actually going to pull up Casey Middlestat's face-off numbers right now. Let's see. This year he has been 57.1% at the face-off dot. To put that in perspective, Charlie Coyle this year is at 51.8. So at best, you're bringing in what? 57.1.
About 5%.
Yeah, you're talking about another 5 out of 100 faceoffs.
Yep.
That's the best guy who went, other than Elias Lindholm, and even Lindholm. You don't off the top of your head know where he's at. I'm guessing.
I think he's at 50%, 57% around there. I'm thinking
60 dead even.
What is it?
60% dead even in Vancouver this year. 56.4 total. 55.5 with Calgary for a total of 56.4 on the season. He's a career 53-4 guy anyway. So again, we're talking 2 to 5 faceoffs out of 100 that, I mean, it's just not
one percentage point is not a lot. It's 1 percentage point is 1 faceoff out of 100.
Right. And by the way, Johnny Beecher is at 53.9%. Now that there's no roster limit, and I know he's been an emergency recall the last couple days, which I know this is one of the rules that you like to remind people of. As long as you have the cap space, you can carry as many players on the roster now going forward as you can fit under the cap. So right now, the emergency recalls don't count against that, but you only get 4 calls.
No. The emergency recall counts against the cap.
No. I'm saying they don't count against the 4 call-ups that you get.
Right.
So that's why they're doing it as emergency call-ups right now, because they qualify and they're going to have to pick their 4 call-ups carefully. Maybe at some point Beecher gets the call to stay, but right now, just leave things alone.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I don't think there is a Patrice Bergeron out there that would have made a drastic improvement on the faceoffs.
No,
Maybe Jonathan Tays
yeah,
in the next couple of weeks.
yeah, but even then, you had to have him on the roster by what's the deadline to have him qualify for the playoffs? Was that March 8th?
Oh no. You can sign him now. Remember, they did it with Miro Shatan as well.
Right, but isn't
Right.
there a deadline to have him on the roster by to qualify for the playoffs?
Um I think that's in a trade or a waiver transaction.
Oh,
I'm not sure about free agents.
I
Well,
because
I'm sure I'm
thought
sure about European free agents. I'm sure about college free agents. I'm just not sure about NHL free agents.
I remember hearing something about it that Vancouver had to make a decision on Phil Kessel, which is where I think I'm getting that from. Because Vancouver
Like I said,
Kessel out
like
till
I said, I know the rules when it comes to college free agents, CHL free agents, European free agents. They can come in after trade deadline. Torrey Krug did it. Charlie McAvoy did it. Miro Shatan did it. All signed after, got on the roster after trade deadline and played in the playoffs. I'm just not sure what an NHL free agent is.
right. No, and that's why I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying I think that's where I heard it from was because Vancouver had flown Phil Kessel in, and I think I remember hearing it something to do with Phil Kessel having a deadline to sign by. So we'll be able to sort that out either way. But regardless, I even Jonathan Taves though. I mean, the guy hasn't been playing all year.
No, but
So he would need some
I,
ramp up time, and what you're going to get 56% out of him, another 5%, 8%. Like, I mean, it's not as crucial of a pain point as people are trying to make it out to be.
well, no, I disagree there. It is an issue, but it's not something that one guy's going to come in and fix.
Right. Well,
It's something across the board.
it's across the board of a problem throughout their center depth, but bringing in one guy isn't going to fix it. And that's what I mean by it's a bigger issue. It's not as big of an issue as people are making it out to be that one guy can fix.
Right.
They need a Bergeron guy to come into the practice room and be like, okay, we're going to stay here for 3 hours until we get this right. But we've talked about it before. It's a mix of a number of different things. Like Poitras was losing faceoffs, as you pointed out, because of strength, not because of technique. And then you have a guy like Frederick, who's probably not as technically sound in the faceoff dot, but has the strength that Poitras doesn't have. So it's none of them are built in a perfect way for faceoffs. They all have a flaw to it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we were talking about the acquisitions of Maroon and Peak, and then also slid in under the radar. Which, by the way, I do want to thank Diamond for the comment. Anyone else who has them, we will pop them up as well. Under the radar, though, the Parker Wotherspoon extension. I love that move. They got him at a great number, both for the team and I think it works well for him too. If I'm not mistaken, it was a one-way contract.
1 year, one way. Yeah, 800,000.
So, I mean, I think that pretty much gives you an idea what they're leaning towards for your third pair next year, Peak and Wotherspoon.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk about that because I've got a roster made up as it looks like right now that we can put up and discuss later because like the Peak acquisition had next year in mind. It it wasn't just for this year.
Right.
Maroon was just for this year. They've got so much to play with next year. Um, I guess we might as well segue into Linus Allmark because that's going to come up in both conversations. So whether there was a deal in place and he nixed it, I know LA was rumored. I will say this: I have a contact with the LA Kings that told me flat out there was no deal in place. There were conversations, but there was no deal in place. I can't imagine Don Sweeney working out a trade with the LA Kings and then approaching Linus Allmark and saying, um, I have a deal in place with the LA Kings. Are you willing to waive? And then he says no. And the 2 weeks worth of work you just did in negotiations all goes down the tube. I would like to think that Sweeney would say, listen, LA's calling. Would you be willing to waive there, to go there? And if so, I'll continue conversations. If not, there's no point in me continuing the conversation with them. And I think that's the way that worked out. Now, everybody's talking about dumping him for next year. They need the money. They need the cap space. You can't spend $12 million on goaltenders. Well,
first of all,
yeah, you can.
There's no rule.
And they don't need the money. The biggest issue is, are they that firm in believing in Brandon Bussey that it's worth risking losing him for nothing to keep Linus Allmark around? That, to me, is the bigger question.
Right. And I do want to point out to what you were saying about it being the Kings. Jimmy Murphy, Bruins insider, tweeted out 4 days ago, shortly thereafter as well, saying, and I quote, despite reports it was a trade with the Kings that Linus Allmark nixed, I confirmed with a source very close to the situation it was not. So was it the Avs? He thinks it was the Avs. And again, having multiple people say that it was definitely not the Kings, I don't know if it was the Avs or not, but multiple people are saying it was not the Kings. Your sources, Murphy's putting that out there very publicly, saying that it wasn't the Kings as well. The Avs were looking for goaltending help, so I can't imagine they wouldn't have done some calls and stuff like that. But to your point, hey, Colorado called looking for you. Is this something you would do? Well, he's got a family. So for him to sit there and go, no, I don't want to fly halfway or 3/4 of the way across the country, and they're on my no trade list because I don't want to go that far. That makes sense. We've heard it was for geographical reasons, so it makes sense. To your point, there's no reason why they can't carry the two goaltenders next year because, as we've said before, cap space doesn't mean shit unless you spend it on something.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen other teams weaponize their cap space by being brokers and deals and stuff. I don't think that's something Don Sweeney's looking to do anytime soon. But if it's going to help, I don't see him shying away from it. But this team is not in a mode where taking on another team's money is going to help them. It's easier for him to stay away from a trade like that, not be a broker, unless he's really getting something of high value for it. A second, a third, a first, something like that, where it's worth bringing on the extra money for an asset that they can then flip for, you just mentioned Brandon Bussey. Well, if they move on from Allmark, they may need that type of goaltender, but they already have a couple. So that's not a move they need to go out and get and weaponize cap space for to get a young up-and-coming goaltender because they already have 2, 3 if you want to count Reed Dick.
Yep.
Who I know you're very high on.
Yep.
And I know There was a pod I was listening to earlier today. I think it might have been the Athletic Hockey Show, where they were also talking about the potential for Minnesota to look to re-sign Marc-Andre Fleury for another year, which would put someone like Middlestat on the market. So you really have to look ahead and see, Jeremy Swayman is the one who has most trade value at this point. Between Omar Swayman and Bussy, he's the one who's got the highest trade value.
Yeah.
So now it becomes, what can you get for the highest trade value? Is it worth it? And then what are those other tiers below? And are you willing to give up a guy? Because Bussy, wants to make the NHL. DiPietro wants to make the NHL. So if they have a chance next year to go somewhere else where they can get NHL ice time for a good length of time, or at least a good look at it, they're going to take it.
Sure they are.
They'd be crazy not to.
Sure they are. Absolutely.
Do you want to take a look at those cards that you sent my way for the lineup going into next year?
Yeah, put up the NHL roster as we know it
here
for this year or for next season, as
based
we
off of
know.
what we have as we know today.
Yeah. So obviously we'll start on the far right with the goalies. Obviously they're going to have to figure that out. Get Jeremy Swayman locked up, arbitration eligible again. Brandon Bussy is arbitration eligible. Linus Ullmark. There's your three choices. And I would throw Michael DiPietro in there, who's also arbitration eligible, as a long shot.
Do you think DiPietro and Bussy could actually go to arbitration, though?
Well, it's up to them. I mean, they could file, so why not? But that's the thing that they have to solve first and foremost.
Yep.
If they get out of peak what they think they are going to get out of peak, your top 6 defensemen are locked up already for next year. That's your top 6. Okay, Ian Mitchell, as things stand now, would probably be the 7th defenseman.
I do like how you have Lindholm, McAvoy, Lorite, Carlo. I like that as the top 4.
Yeah, I haven't set any pairs or lines here. I just threw names up. So that leaves Grzelcyk, Forbort, Shattenkirk, all unrestricted free agents, probably gone.
Yeah, the only one that I think may have a shot at coming back this coming season, and it's just because he might be willing to take a discount to either reset his value for 1 year or to play with McAvoy, would be Grzelcyk. And even then, I'm not overly extending him. I'm probably capping out my offer at like 2.5 for a year.
Yeah, well, we'll see what they do, but I think that they've pretty much locked themselves into those being the top 7 that I have there. Up front, this is where the questions come in, because to make up a roster, I had to throw Lysell and Merkulov and Beecher in there, because you've got Maroon, Van Riemsdyk, Heinen, and DeBrusk are all unrestricted free agents. The big key there is Jake DeBrusk. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you sign him, you could move Lysell down to the third line, Geekie to the middle of the third line, and go with Frederick Geekie and Lysell. What that means for Merkulov now is unknown. Okay, but even if you look at it, what's the max that you spend on DeBrusk and Swayman?
Collectively, maybe 14. Like, that's a high contract for one of them, and a mid-level contract for the other. I mean,
14 for the two of them?
No, 13. That's let's say you do DeBrusque at 5.5, and then Swayman at 6, 7. You're in that 12 to 13 range.
Okay, so they still, let's say that's what happens. They
I'm
still
saying that's
got
the
8. Yeah, I can't see it being any more than that.
Exactly.
Heaven forbid if it is.
I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm saying that's the highest.
Okay, hold on. Yeah, that's what I asked you for.
Yep.
Is the max. Okay, so that means they still have $8 million in cap space.
Which is only
$8
good if they
million.
use it on someone.
That
means it's only good if they use it on someone.
Right. So this move, trade Allmark, got to trade Allmark for cap space. No, they don't have to. They absolutely don't have to. If they're going to trade Allmark, it's because they believe in Bussy and don't want to lose him to waivers.
Right. Now, you got 7 names in red, all of whom are becoming unrestricted free agents. Maroon, Van Riemsdyk, Heinen, DeBrusque, Grizz, Forbort, and Shattenkirk. Of those 7, who would you prioritize in bringing back?
DeBrusque and Heinen.
I would probably, I don't disagree with the names. I would probably put them in the opposite order. I would target Heinen over DeBrusque, to be honest with you. I feel like Heinen, 1, will come in cheaper, and 2, he's more versatile in the lineup.
Yeah, but I look at it like this. I've been tough on Jake DeBrusque.
We all have.
Really, really tough. But I say that with the caveat that I know that Jake DeBrusque, with stability in life, stability in team, stability in teammates, can play at a high level in this league. We've seen it over 7 years of his career.
Yeah.
When he has stability, he can play and he can be an important player. And I think if he gets a contract for 3, 4, 5 years, he's not worried for the next 3, 4, 5 years. We saw it last year. We saw it last year when he knew he was under contract. He had rescinded his trade request, signed a contract, had 2 years of stability, was in a stable position in the lineup, and look what he did.
We also saw it just the other day. He played really, really well as soon as the trade deadline was over, and he knew he was here for the rest of the season.
Exactly. So I would put DeBrusque ahead of Heinen. Maroon, he's only here for the year. Van Riemsdyk, I don't know who do I want to take out of the lineup for Van Riemsdyk next season? Nobody really.
No one really. Yeah, I'm even looking at it going, how would I shift things around if you bring back DeBrusque and Heinen? I'm not even sure I want to put Fabian Lysell on the third line. I would rather have like Zaka Coyle.
Yeah, the lines don't matter. I just did this for the numbers.
Right.
But I'm saying, doesn't matter where in the lineup these guys are. Who are you taking out for JVR? Doesn't matter whether it's fourth line or first line. Who are you taking out?
Maybe Merkulov. And that's just because this year when he's been called up, he didn't look ready. So if I can replace someone, he seems to be the weak link.
Yeah, but if you're bringing back Heinen and DeBrusque, Merkulov is already out of the lineup.
Exactly. And
so you're not taking him out for JVR.
And Brazeau's probably out of the lineup at that point too, or Lysell.
Right.
You have DeBrusque in there.
Right. So you're not taking them out for JVR.
And that's why I'm looking at JVR going, no thanks, I'm good. Thanks for the year. And I think he's also going to go off and get, kind of like Connor Clifton did. He'll get an overpriced contract. We've seen the last couple of years, and God bless him for getting paid. I'm not rooting against the player for getting paid. I just don't want us to be the team that pays JVR, a 2-year contract at $3 million AAV.
Right. And I think the same thing's going to happen to Matt Gruslick, and see you later.
Right. And good for them. Players deserve to
Yeah.
get paid. I'm not against that. We don't have to be the team that writes the contract. We don't have to sign the check.
Exactly. So there's a lot of room to maneuver, whether Allmark is on the roster or is traded, or Swayman for that matter.
Right. You want me to pull up the other one? That
Yeah.
was Providence lineup?
Yeah, because that shows the depth and
Okay.
and where the Bruins are really lacking now, because they got a lot of guys expiring this season, even in Providence. Like, you look at the defense, okay? You basically got 3 rookies in Mast, Brunet, and Edward under contract for next year.
Yep.
That's it. Oh, and Drew Ribeiro that they signed yesterday.
Yeah. That's an interesting. You were talking about the contract spots, and now they are down to just one.
Well, they were. He signed an ATO to finish the year in Providence. His contract doesn't start till next year.
Okay, so they still have one spot left, or 2 spots left.
One.
That's okay. That's what I was saying. Is they had 2, they signed Drew, and then they went down to 1.
No.
That's what I saw.
They had 1. They signed Drew to an ATO, which stays at 1. An ATO is an amateur tryout agreement for the AHL. That
maybe Cap Friendly updated it incorrectly from when I saw it, or they just hadn't fully updated everything from the trade deadline or something.
His
I saw it, they had 48, and then I checked and they had 49. But
his contract is for next year, which doesn't count for this year. It's not a contract for this year.
I don't know anything about him though. Do you have any insight into him?
Yeah. He's a big kid. He can skate. He blocks a ton of shots. Like, he's a shot blocking machine. Can skate, can move the puck fairly well. I just think that his hockey sense is lacking a little bit to be able to produce offense at the next level. His offense from the blue line has actually dropped over the last couple of seasons in the NCAA. So, as a big guy who can move and block shots and play well defensively, he has an NHL shot, albeit a small one, but I'm not expecting a ton of offense from him.
So do you think he's someone that they brought in to kind of help push along some of the depth, some of the guys like a Mast, a Burdett, just to kind of give them that extra kick, and like other people want this too? Internal competition. We've heard him talk about it ad nauseum in years in the past.
Well, even with them, they've only got 4 defensemen signed for next year.
Yeah,
like Callahan. I don't know that they even bring Callahan back.
No,
I doubt it.
I know you.
Mitchell right now is scheduled as the 7th defenseman in Boston.
Well, I know that you wrote an article earlier this year about, I believe it was Regula, and how he's becoming a solid stay-at-home defenseman.
Yeah.
So do you think they look to bring him back to maybe be some depth on the right side as a shutdown?
Oh, Regula? Yeah, I think they bring him back. Definitely.
Okay. And Mitchell's a little bit more of a puck mover. So, I mean, they're good depth pieces on the right side. Obviously, to your point, though, they're not under contract right now. But
yeah, if you go back to the previous page, I had Mitchell up there right now in Boston as the
Yep.
seventh defenseman.
Yep. Right there, right under Peak. So, and if he gets moved up, then really now you're looking at Mass, Regula, Brunet, and Edwards as your top four in Providence. Assuming they
Yeah.
get Regula re-signed, those are your four guys.
Yeah. And Walsh can walk as a Group 6 unrestricted free agent.
And if I'm Walsh, I probably take that choice because that gives me 31 other teams that I can try and jump on with.
Yeah.
Let's see. I mean, don't get me wrong. They're going to be able to go out and get other defensemen. It's just right now, that's the back end work they have to get done. And then your front grouping, your forward grouping, Lysell, Merkulov, who you had on the other page right now, bumped up a level because open spots right now. And then you've got Harrison, Pedersen, Farinacci, Brown, Kuntar. Is it Makura? But he's only on an AHL deal.
Yeah, but they got to sign that guy. They do.
And then Anthony Richard is an unrestricted free agent. I mean, but this is why, because Toporowski would have fallen under an unrestricted free agent next season too, right?
No, he had another year left.
Interesting.
He signed it. He signed a 2-year deal.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He's been passed by other forwards. He's not exactly next man up when it comes to the forward group. But, I mean, if he had the contract spot, it maybe that's why Minnesota wanted him. I mean, he also probably wanted to.
Well, I think it was Mark Dibber that tweeted it out that Minnesota really liked him when the Bruins signed him to an AHL deal. Minnesota tried to sign him as well. So they've had interest in the player before.
I think I did read that too. So, they're revisiting someone they had previous interest in.
Yeah.
And like I said, for you, again, he wasn't exactly next man up down the middle or on the left side, and with Harrison, Merkulov, Lysell, all these guys are more deemed long-term important,
Yeah.
I guess. So, even Kuntar was going to get called up before Toporowski. It would have been nice to see him, but he wasn't doing anything to force your hand to say, okay, this guy's got to get NHL action ASAP.
No. It's like he went into this season and just changed his game for whatever reason. And it's beyond me because he could score, he could put up points, but for whatever reason, he just changed his game this year. And I know some people have hinted that he looked at the Boston roster and thought that the only way he could make his roster was to revamp or change his game, and it didn't work out for him.
Yeah, which, as they say, you win some, you lose some.
Yeah.
Hopefully Minnesota, fresh start for the kid. I mean, it's nothing against him. It just, here we are. And I know we've talked about Kuntar possibly making the big club next year as kind of a dark horse.
Yeah. But as it looks like right now, there just won't be room for him down the left side next year.
Yeah. It just, I don't know. I'm going to pull back up this one here on the left side. I don't see it either.
If anything, he's Jacob Lauko with a better offense.
Yeah, that sounds like a good option there, a good comparable there. Do you see Brazeau in the semi-short, long-term plans for the team, or is this just like, what do you think the team actually thinks of him?
I don't know. I really don't. I would like to keep him around. I really would. But it all depends. The reason why he's working out so well now is because he's playing with two guys that can all-out fly in Boquist and Lauco.
Right.
So they can make up for his skating deficiencies. Brazo's, I mean. So they're not being caught up ice because all three of them are slow. So it depends on the makeup of the line. Like Maroon, Brazo, and I don't care who you put in the middle, to me won't work.
No,
It's just too slow.
I'll put it this way, though. I trust Pat Maroon in the lineup in the playoffs more than I do Justin Brazeau.
Well, yeah.
That. And the fact that, I mean, let's face it, you put insurance in the deal by making the pick conditional that if he doesn't get healthy and play in the playoffs, you don't give up the pick. It's pretty simple.
Yeah.
I feel like playing 2 games would have been a nice, better insurance policy, but hey, you know what? If the guy gets into a playoff game, that's what you got him for. So you can't be real too mad about it. And if I'm not mistaken, that pick was 3 years out. I'm going to pull up the deal again.
It's up at the top there. Can't see my own screen.
2026 conditional.
Yeah.
And it's a 6th rounder. Let's be real. It's not expensive draft capital. Yeah, right there. Conditional 6.
Unless you get lucky.
Right. Yeah, you have to get really lucky in the 6th round. We've gone through a bunch of the trades that they've done. I mean, yes, it's possible to get lucky with a 6th round pick, but it's slim.
Right.
You know, you take the playoff run now, and you know, a 6th round pick is easy to recoup. A 1st or a 2nd round pick is not.
Right.
And that's why everybody's so upset because of what Vegas does. The Bruins did exactly what Vegas is doing. They put floorboard on LTIR. Like I think it's hilarious when people complain that teams use LTIR.
The Bruins are using $5.5 million in LTIR right now. If they didn't have that, they wouldn't be able to ice a full roster.
Right, but I mean, if I pull up just cap friendly right now, real quick, injuries, LTIR is next to, Toronto, Vegas, Montreal, Tampa, Boston, Ottawa, the Kings, the Capitals, the Avalanche, the Canucks, the Wild, the Penguins. I can go on for another 4 teams.
Yeah, but why aren't we hating on the Montreal Canadiens for using it?
I mean, they're using it for Shea Weber and Carey Price. Not Shea Weber. They traded that one. They're using it for Carey Price. $10.5 million for this year and the next.
They've used it for 3 years.
Right.
So why aren't we shitting on them?
Because they're losing.
Right.
Because they suck. They're using the same mechanism in the collective bargaining agreement with long-term injury reserve. And for them, it's not working because they're still relying on Caden Primo and Samuel Mutombo in goal. And, their top line is Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, and Brendan Gallagher versus Mark Stone going down with a ruptured spleen and replacing him with Thomas Hertl. Like, that's a ballsy move by Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
They may not. They could miss the playoffs, and also this is the other flip side: is they could. Let's say they all get healthy for the playoffs, and you got Hertl as your 3rd line center. You've got Stone back. Like everybody gets healthy. Yeah, on paper it's a fucking juggernaut. But you know what? What if Mark Stone and let's say Barbashev. Let's say they don't mesh.
Right.
On the same line. Like, let's say Hertl can't be the center next to Mark Stone. Like you still have to figure out the chemistry. What if Noah Hannafin goes in? I mean, he looked awesome next to Alex Pietrangelo, but they're both really fucking good defensemen. But what if the chemistry just isn't there?
We could play the what if game forever. Like, what if Mark Stone got injured today as opposed to when he did, and Vegas, it was too late for Vegas to do anything to replace him.
Right. I mean, we were close to that last year with Boston.
Yeah,
It's exactly what we did last year when we brought in Bertuzzi through Taylor Hall and LTIR. We thought he was done. He ended up being able to come back. Didn't work. And we were glad we brought Bertuzzi in, but once we got to the playoffs, there was also a lot less chemistry. We saw it happen because they hadn't all been playing together the whole time.
right.
That's one of the reasons why I'm going to pull the overview down real quick. But that's one of the reasons why I'm glad, regardless of whether it was the Avalanche, the Kings, the Devils, I'm glad Linus Ullmark is here. You could see the excitement on the ice in the locker room right after the deadline. Linus wants to be here. They're all glad that he's here. I think they will get further.
What about Swayman coming out for the hug and doing the "you're staying"?
Yep. And it wasn't just like, hey, yeah, you're here. It was, you're fucking here, man. Like, you stayed. This is what we've got. This is what we're doing. Let's fucking go. They're pumped for it.
Yeah.
And it's that excitement that makes me sit here and go, I want to see the tandem in the playoffs. I don't think they're going to shy away from it this year.
No, I want to see it too. I'll tell you what I really want to see, because now that Detroit has lost, what is it, 6 in a row?
Yep.
That puts the Islanders in the second wild card spot. And I would love to see the standings just finish the way they are. You got Bruins and Leafs. You got the Islanders, Panthers. The Islanders can give the Panthers a run. And then you got Tampa, Rangers, Vasilevsky versus
Shesterkin.
That's going to be an awesome series, and I think Tampa can give them a run.
Tampa can still give anybody a run.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah, so like I'm and then that leaves the Canes and Flyers.
Yep.
Canes should take that one. So the only for sure in that, if it finished the way it is today, is the Canes over the Flyers.
Yeah, I mean, and Boston, the matchup with Toronto, I like that matchup. I would favor Boston for sure, but it's still going to be close.
Yeah.
And that would mean, let's see, that bracket would bring. Oh, I'd love to see that New York, Florida series.
Yeah, I think the Islanders could give them a run, a real legitimate run. Yeah. It could be Florida's toughest series,
especially
to the Stanley Cup final.
Yeah, I would argue that it would be, because then they would get Boston at a minimum in the third round.
No, they would get Boston in the second round.
They would get them in the second round, but they'd have to go through the Islanders, then the Bruins, and then probably the Hurricane.
Yeah, and I think the Islanders would be their toughest series.
Probably, yeah. I'm looking at that right now. I mean, the playoffs are going to be fun no matter what. I mean, it's the NHL.
Oh, good. That first round is like nothing like in any other sport. So, but let me ask you this: back to trade deadline, and we're talking Detroit. Do you think they did enough?
No, I don't think they did enough for this year. I feel like Yzerman looked at it and went, there's nothing I can do to make us significantly better without mortgaging more than he wanted to.
So it could eventually cost them a playoff spot.
Yes. The question, though, that I would have is, would you rather sacrifice this year's playoff spot and be in the playoffs for the next 7 years, or make the playoffs this year and then miss for 3 years and then get back in again 4 years down the road?
Well, there's no guarantee that they would miss the next 3 years. I just thought he would have done more to, well, let's backtrack. They were solidly in a playoff spot at trade deadline.
They're only 2 points behind Tampa right now. So it's not like, and they have the same games played. Like, they are able to jump right back in. I will say, though, I mean, I don't expect Buffalo to make a push, but they're also only at 67 points. So they're 5 points out from Detroit. They could easily switch spots with Detroit. Like, that's not going to be completely unheard of there. I don't know. I feel like at this point, you pretty much have what your playoff teams are going to be.
So you're saying Detroit's going to miss out?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think there's enough there with Patrick Waugh behind the bench and Sorokin, and let's not forget, even Varlamov has still played well behind Sorokin. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, Bobrovsky's playing well for Florida. I mean, the only one that you really look at right now, and the ones that you look at right now and question goaltending, the Leafs, which they seem to have their answer in Joseph Woll. Now that he's healthy, that's who they're probably going to stick with. The question mark isn't as big. It's just, what are you going to get out of Woll, because he's unproven compared to other guys.
Right.
But Red Wings, 3 goaltenders. The Sabres, Devin Levi's not ready. UPLs look solid, but he can't carry them. I like the addition of Bowen Byram. That might give him a little bit of boost on the back end. I just don't see it being enough to push him up into the standings to make a run this year.
5 points is a lot to make up with only 18 games left.
Right, which is why I'm also ruling out Montreal and Ottawa. Just saying. Mathematically, they may not be eliminated, but they might as well be. The Rangers, obviously Shesterkin and Jonathan Quick has played way better than a lot of people expected, especially after his preseason. The Hurricanes, Kochetkov, I mean, he's playing really, really well, and they just got Anderson back.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but Antti Ranta's not a terrible number 3.
Like, no, he's not.
And I was preaching patience with Kochetkov earlier in the year, and it's paid off. Like, they're in second place. I don't see them catching the Rangers, but it's possible. I mean, Carolina's a good enough team, and they just got Jake Gensel and, Kuznetsov. They could make a push for first. I don't think so. I just don't think there's enough games left. The Flyers.
Well, that's just it. They're running out of games. That's the problem.
But they're solid into a playoff spot. So I don't think it ultimately matters. I think right now for them, it's just a matter of get our game ready, stay healthy, and come game 1, let's be ready to go. And figure out, is it going to be Anderson or Kochetkov in net between the two of them? The Flyers, their goaltending has dipped since Carter Hart stepped away, but they weren't ever circling this year going, this is the year we're going for it. They've just been more vocal about it than Boston by simply going, this is a retooling year for us.
So basically what you're saying is that nobody in the East and probably nobody in the West has the goaltending the Bruins do.
Not to the degree in which I trust it the same way. The Bruins, it doesn't matter who's in the net, have a chance to win. And it doesn't matter. Like, Swayman can stub his toe tomorrow and they go, okay, Allmark, it's going to be your turn. He needs a day off on his foot. He'll back you up, but it's your net. And they'll both sit there and be like, all right, let's go. We got this. And then they'll just rotate again the next day and they'll just keep going with it. If Jake Ottinger slips in the shower and twists an ankle, he's still got to play on that ankle. You're not going to Scott Wedgwood, not in a playoff game.
Right.
Alexander Gorgiev is overworked in Colorado. I'm not surprised to hear that they were looking for goaltending help. A lot of people thought they were going to go for like a Dan Vladar type. Yes, Gorgiev is a good, solid goaltender, but it drops off significantly behind him. You see Saros, Kakkonen, and Askarov. I just don't see Askarov being quite there just yet that you want to throw him into a playoff fire. But you know how some people are. They would rather have the number one AHL goaltender go in because he's been playing all the time versus the number two in the NHL. So that's a scenario where that might work because Askarov has that higher ceiling. Doesn't mean I trust it. And I know Brossoit's had a really good season for Winnipeg, but he ain't no Connor Hellebuck.
Oh, no. It's like that's like Linus Ullmark versus me.
Right. It's one of those things where it's like if I'm anybody in the West, I mean, hell, even if I'm Nashville and I go into the game against Winnipeg and I'm like, oh, it's not Hellebuck? We got a shot now.
Yeah.
Like, going in against Connor Hellebuck, you're like, fuck, we got to get this guy 4 games in a row. Like, yeah, do I trust Hellebuck in the playoffs? Sure. But do I trust game 1, game 2, Hellebuck versus Swayman Ullmark? Probably about the same.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, but Vasilevsky's looked human.
Oh, but he has a knack of turning it up come playoff time, though.
He does. I will not discount that. And we've also seen Sergei Bobrovsky be two-face. One face in the regular season, one face in the playoffs, and they never match.
Yeah,
He's had
exactly.
a good regular season. He is due for a stinker. But we can see him go God mode like he did last year and carry him for 3 fucking rounds. Who the fuck knows?
Exactly.
All I know is with Boston, whichever goaltender is in net, I sit there and go, they have a chance to win.
Yeah, just imagine the Leafs going, game 1 against Swayman. It's like, we got to face this guy at least 4 more times. And the next game they get Ullmark, and it's like, we got to face this guy at least 2 more times.
Right. Yeah, no, exactly. So, no, I listen, they're award-winning goaltending. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And, that's where so is Vasilevsky, so is Bobrovsky, so is Shesterkin. That's what they all have in common. These good teams have good goaltending.
Yeah, playoffs are going to be wild. That's for sure.
I'm looking forward to it.
That's for sure. So am I. I always look forward to the playoffs. Now,
when we get there, we have to figure out retaining.
If you get a game like Monday night, where after the first period I'm going, screw this, I'm going to bed.
Yeah.
And turn the game off. You just knew right from opening puck drop that the Bruins just did not have it.
Right. And you know what? People want to make a big deal. Right now, it's a game. Yes, they've had bad spells recently, and then they had the Toronto. Like, you know what? They call them the dog days for a reason.
It's not just that, Chris. It's that they're doing it against non-playoff teams. They're fine against the playoff teams. Like, you figure that these guys at this point, at this stage in the season, do not need to be motivated or brought up by their coach.
Yeah, I don't know. Right now, I want to see more of what the next few games look like because there was also a lot of emotion around the trade deadline for this team. Let's get through tomorrow's game with Montreal. I want to see what they do. Then you got Philly on Saturday. And then I'm going to start to look for more pattern-based, pattern-based behavior, I guess you could say. That's where I'm going to look at, okay, how's even if they're losing, how are they playing in a tight 3-goal game? Like, are they giving up 3-goal leads, 2-goal leads? If they play a good game and they go to overtime and they lose it in overtime, I'm not going to lose my shit if they played well. There's no 3-on-3 overtime in the playoffs. I can't rip them for sucking at 3-on-3 against Connor McDavid, Evan Bouchard, and Leon Draisaitl. I can be upset because the game went into overtime and they had a 2-goal lead, or they had the 1-goal lead rather. And yes, I wish Danton Heinen was a right-handed shot, so that shot goes in the empty net, and then the bounce of a puck up in the air that, like, head height doesn't matter. It's a fluke bounce. I'm not holding that one against them. They played well. They got a game bounced.
It's a game of inches. That's what it is. Always has been. Always will be. I just want to see. I'm looking forward to Montreal to see how Peak fits in. From there, I'm curious who they pair him with in Montreal. Will it be Waterspoon? Will it be Lori? Will it be Grizzlick?
Knowing Jim Montgomery, the answer will be yes.
Yeah, all three, right?
I think he will see time with everybody. So I want to see how I think next week we will have a lot more to talk about because we will have Peak in the lineup. We'll be able to dissect all that. I know it's getting kind of late here and it's about time to start wrapping up. I got to go take care of some stuff too. So, probably a little earlier than normal, but we've been going for a little over an hour. Do you have any final thoughts to wrap it up?
Yeah,
Tom?
I've been dying to. It just seems the last few shows I've had to come in and say something about Jackson Edward.
Oh yeah, give me.
And this is directed to.
I got to step away for a real quick minute. All right, I'll be right back.
Yeah, this is directed towards one listener. I'm not going to mention any names, but the other night, Jackson Edward took a hit that was kind of blindsided into the end boards, got knocked down. It was a hard hit, and he got up and started throwing punches. Now, I've been hard on Edward all season long for some of the dumbass things that he did. And this one particular listener is going on and on about how Jackson Edward only goes after smaller players, and that's the type of guy he is. And for as hard as I've been on Edward, I have to come to his defense here. Because what happened is Edward got up and really started blasting the referee, ended up getting a 10-minute misconduct. Everybody read it as a game misconduct, and he was going to be suspended again. But anyway, this thing that he picks on smaller players is just utter nonsense bullshit. Jackson Edward is 6'3", 190 pounds. You check out his fight card in the OHL. He's fought one player smaller than him, Merrick Van Acker of the Brantford Bulldogs, 6'1", 175. Everybody else has been his size or bigger. And to take it a step further, the average height and weight of most OHL teams is 6'1", 185 pounds. So there isn't a huge size discrepancy there. There are some teams that come in just over 6 feet, but it's not like this guy is making it out to be. Okay, the guy that threw the hit was smaller, but I think any one of us would have come up throwing punches. So to this person, learn or do some investigating before you start spewing bullshit out there. Um, get your facts straight. What you're saying is not true. And I hate coming to the defense of a player that I've been hard on myself all season long. Uh, but the crap that you're spewing about him is just totally false. And to take it even one more step further, and I talked to to OHL hockey players. I talked to quite a few of them. You talk to other teams' fans, and I can tell you that the most feared player in the OHL is Florian Jacquet, who you mentioned Jackson Edward going up his older brother Arbor with the Montreal Canadiens and how he would never do that. Florian is a tough SOB, a mean son of a bitch. And that's why he's the most feared among Ontario Hockey League players that I talk to. You can continue talking to your fans, but I talk to the players. Second on the list is Jackson Edward. And a few weeks ago, Jackson Edward went after him. He was ready to drop the gloves. In fact, he already had his stick on the ice and one glove off uh, before the linesman got in between them. Wouldn't let them fight. And I can tell you, talking to a couple of dozen players, they all wanted to see that fight. So stop with your bullshit about him going after midgets and people under 6 feet because I've just proven you totally, totally wrong. Do your fact checking and do some investigating before you start spewing shit. And I'm sorry that I had to come to his defense because, like I've said, Chris will tell you, I've been tough on him with some of the boneheaded things he's done this season.
A little bit. Definitely.
I just had to get that off my chest, Chris.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's one of the things that you and I pride our show on is facts. And that's why, we were talking about it before when I say, oh yeah, I would give Sweeney that B plus A minus grade. Just looking at the facts of what we know, that's what I'm giving him that grade on. Not because, he didn't pull the trigger on a deal to get player X. I don't know that. I'm glad he kept Linus Ullmark for whatever reason. I'm glad he looked at any offers that came his way and said they weren't enough. And whatever team it was that Linus basically said, no, I'm not willing to waive, however far they got in those discussions. I completely agree with you. I think it's completely asinine to think that they would spend 2 hours even hashing out a deal for Sweeney to then go, okay, well, let me go check and see if he'll waive his no trade clause. Like, that's just dumb and it's inefficient, and that's not how it would work in reality. Just because you can do that on your fucking Xbox doesn't mean that's how it works in the real world.
Right.
So we want to be as factual as we can. And when we're bringing opinion to the table, we try to make it known that it's our opinion based off of, what we know to be true. Some of it's more educated opinion. Some of it is more, assumptive opinion, you could call it. We're assuming Don Sweeney wouldn't get that far into a negotiation, but we both also have the common sense enough to know that a veteran general manager like Don Sweeney isn't going to put together a deal that can be nixed by the player just because the player doesn't want to waive his no trade clause.
Right. Sweeney knows that there is a possibility. Let's say they had worked out a trade. Sweeney knows there's a possibility that the details could get out.
Right.
Okay? And he doesn't want details to get out. That's why he's going to approach Allmark first and say, look, will you or won't you? And then work out the details. because he doesn't want players' names attached
Right.
to something only to get nixed.
And we get things that come out often. Sometimes it's years later, but it's still going to get out. I mean, you go back. I mean, to his credit, a guy like Brian Burke, he's been open about some of the deals that didn't go through for him in his tenure as general managers. Now, granted, a lot of that now is years later, and I guarantee you, he's already had conversations with the players to say, yeah, that rumor was true. I almost dealt you for this, like, you know. And once the player retires, they really probably don't give a damn.
Right.
But you know, especially when you look at it in terms of, all right, a guy that I respect in my locker room, who has a wife and child, who's enrolled in school. If I'm not mistaken, Linus Olmark's daughter is school age.
Mm-hmm.
You know, not like older school, but you know, still school.
Right.
He's likely not going to want to sit there and go, okay, I'm going to go play hockey for 2 months in Colorado. I'm going to waive my no trade clause to do it. You know, whereas if you have a guy like, I don't know, Matt Poitras, just as an example.
Yeah.
I don't think he has a significant other who he's tied to. And even if he did, he doesn't have a child. So if you were to say, hey, Matt, we're dealing you to Calgary because we're going to get Noah Hannafin. Like, yeah, it sucks. I want to see him in the locker room, all that stuff. But you know what? He got an apartment in Boston. He can go get one in Calgary. Like,
that's right.
He can move his stuff. The team can help him. The teams have people in place to say, okay, here, we got your plane ticket all set. This is how you're going to get here. They have people to help him with that. Even though he's 19 and his world just got flipped upside down, they have someone who can say, don't worry, I got you.
Right.
And this is how we're going to get you settled in. The team pays people for that. It's a little bit different when you sit there and go, oh, crap, I won't see my kid for 2 months. Or how am I going to see my kid for 2 months? It's not I won't see my kid. We have FaceTimes and all that stuff. But if Linus Olmark is playing, and I'm just going to use Colorado as an example because it's less direct and it's you know, it's a little closer. That's the sad part is it's closer. You know, if he's home games are in Colorado now, his wife and kid are either here in Massachusetts or they move to Colorado. Good luck, because I can't help. Linus can't help him move. So now the team, and you know, now it's coordinating movers to help them and all this other stuff. Oh, the daughter's in school. You got to get this to transfer. It's a pain in the ass. So if I'm a player who has the control of a no trade clause, and the team you want to send me to is on that no trade list, and I got my wife, my kid, you know, potentially some grandparents to think about, all this other stuff, I'm just going to sit there and go, yeah, we can revisit it in the offseason when I have time to think about it.
Right. Or when it won't be such a burden on my family to pack up and move.
Right. When we can do it as a family, when we can figure it out, you know, when we can go over, you know, when I can talk to my wife about it over a vacation, you know, a beach-ridden vacation where we have no worries, we can talk it out, we can sort out details, we can figure it all out. That's when I'm open to it. Not when I'm trying to get through 18 games just to, by the way, go into a playoff push.
Right. Right. And Colorado's expected to go on a big one.
Any team Linus Olmark was going to go to is expected to go on a playoff push. Except for maybe Jersey this year.
Right.
But, I mean, even then, if you look at it from Jersey's perspective, do you really want to pay the price for Linus Olmark? Like, if you're going to pay a significant price for a goaltender, would you rather go after Linus Olmark, UC Saros, or Markstrom?
Me? I'd rather go after Markstrom.
Right. You're going to pay a little more for Markstrom. You're going to pay a little more for Saros, but I'd rather one of the two of them over Linus Olmark. You get the extra year.
Yeah.
That's a no-brainer.
Definitely.
So I don't think New Jersey was the bidder that, you know, but like I said, we want to try being facts. I'm telling you, my opinion. I don't think it was Jersey.
What's the comment Fitzgerald used? Teams were holding him ransom. Is
Yes.
that? Yeah.
And I think that was directly towards Boston. We want a first-round pick. We want this price for Linus Ullmark. Otherwise, you don't get him.
Yeah,
And you don't want to pay it. I mean, he got Jake Allen at 50% retained and Kokkinen, the backup, on the second to worst team in the league.
Yeah.
Like, that tells you what he was willing to pay. That right there just tells you where his mind was at. He knew goaltending was a problem, but he also didn't want to spend big to fix it.
But here's the thing, Chris. He knew goaltending was a problem last summer and did nothing to address it.
I think he was expecting a bigger jump in Akira Schmid.
Well, and or even how would Mackenzie Blackwood look there right now?
That's the thing. I don't know why they let him walk. I get it because he had injury history, but he's been playing this year.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just get a bad stretch where you get hurt for a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's right when you give up on the guy when he stays healthy. They could use Mackenzie Blackwood.
So he's only got himself to blame for not addressing an issue in the off season. I think it's pretty foolish of him to say that GMs were holding him ransom. I didn't like that much.
I also think it's kind of ironic because he's the one who bet on Vitek Vanacek. Like,
yes,
there was nothing like Vitek Vanacek is a solid number 2. There was nothing ever that I saw in his game that made me sit here and go, he will carry you in a playoff run.
Right.
So the fact that you bet on him, Akira Schmid, and Nico Dawes, I like what I see from Dawes. He's just not ready.
Right.
But at the same time, I've liked what I've seen from UPL and Buffalo for 3 years now. This year, he's finally sitting here going, oh, you brought in 2 other guys? Fuck this, I want the job.
Yeah.
And he's playing like it. Now they also have to make a decision because do they re-sign UPL? They got Devin Levi. Like, I would go with those 2 as a tandem and just say,
exactly.
It's the 2 of you. You have a tandem. We'll use you how we see fit. It's the 2 of you for the next whatever you can get, 3 years, 4 years, and we'll keep building on the team in front of you. That's all you can do.
Eventually, they have to make a decision.
Yeah.
UPL I've always liked back in his days in junior and then back in Europe. So like I think him and Levi could form a good tandem. Not at the level of Swayman and Ullmark, but a decent upper tier tandem at the NHL level.
Yeah, I would agree. It just, which one do you go to in the playoffs?
Well, that's just it. So, they got to get there first.
Yeah, get to the playoffs first. But that's also one, like, if I'm Buffalo, I'm watching Boston this year very closely. Because if the tandem can work in Boston, I look at those 2 and I go, can we replicate that with these 2?
I don't think they could do it to that level, but I think they can be up there. Yeah. Like I said, an upper tier.
Yeah, Boston can reset the goaltending market with a lot of playoff success because if the tandem works and it helps carry them even to the final, I think they just have to get to the final to prove that it works. Because once you get to the final, I mean, let's face it, you're playing a battle-tested Dallas team, Colorado, Vegas. Like you're playing a top-tier team in the West. That if you lose in a 5 games, like no one, you're not going to be favored in the final.
How much could they blow it away if they rode the tandem to the Stanley Cup final and then decided they were going to ride one and lose?
I think that would prove the tandem theory.
Oh, there'd be people calling for Montgomery's head.
People were calling for him last year.
Oh, no, everybody would be calling for his head then this year.
But when you have something that works, you fucking stick to it.
Yeah. You know what? I got no expectations. I just turn the TV on and watch and just try and get some enjoyment out of it. If I'm not getting enjoyment, I switch the channel. You
To a
know,
different game, let's be honest.
I conditioned myself when they were eliminated last year that this was going to be a transition year, and just take what happens with a grain of salt. And that's the way I've looked at the season.
Yeah, and it's funny because we were looking at your lineup cards and all that stuff earlier, and to your point, like, does it really matter what we talk about for the lines? Montgomery's just going to throw them into a blender every fucking 5 minutes anyway.
Yeah. So, it is what it is.
I will say, though, what I think is going to be telling is what does he do in the playoffs? Because, yes, he's got the lines in a blender every 9 minutes, it seems, during the regular season. But you know what?
Yeah.
Come playoff time, we very well could see Freddie, Geeky, Coyle back together. That line's worked really, really well for him. We could see Marchand, Coyle, DeBrusque. We could see what was the JVR, Frederick, and Geeky. That was another one that always had really good success. Like we could see him default back to the lines that worked the best all season long. It's just, I mean, how many times have we seen it where, they ice a puck and one player has changed and all of a sudden you're like, what the fuck is Brazeau doing on the wing with Marchand and,
Mm-hmm.
and so, and Coyle? Well, it's because he's the one who didn't get off the ice yet. But next thing you know, you win the draw and he's the one who's got the puck. Like, oh, let me dump and change from my own blue line. No.
Yeah, I don't care what. Like I said, I just turn the TV on and hope for some enjoyment. If it's not panning out, I switch the channel. I've got no expectations for this year. I haven't had any since May of last year. I knew people ask me how I can be so calm and not get upset about it. What? Because I knew what the year was going to be.
Right.
Did I think it was going to be this good? No, which is making me enjoy it more. But I knew this wasn't their year. Next year's the year.
Next year's the year to really try and see, where the peg goes in the board to try to make things click in place all the way.
I talk to people that get so upset, so pissed off at what they didn't do on trade deadline. And I'm like, dude, like there's more important things in life, man. Like you obviously haven't suffered in life at all, even the smallest detail, if this is what is making you angry.
Right. Yeah, if you're angry because Noah Hannafin went to the Vegas Golden Knights and not Boston, like perspective, my friend.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is.
We've got a couple games. I'm looking ahead at the schedule. It looks like we have an off day again next Wednesday, if I'm looking at the schedule right.
I believe so, yeah.
So I think we'll stick to Wednesday for now, at least until they have a game on a Wednesday, because these last few weeks we've had some solid, some great viewers, some great comments. This week comment section was a little quiet. Hopefully people who are watching, I don't know, I'll have to look and see if maybe there was something going on where they're not coming in. But we got a few things here in the works for What's Bruin and our sister show Puck Off. Don't know what's going to be ready by next week, but we got a few irons in the fire to make things a little bit better. So just keep in tune and like, comment, subscribe, whatever it is. We've got the notifications. You can follow Dom at Dominic Tiano on X, Twitter, myself, CNozic6342. They're on the page here, and all the information will be in the show notes as well. And I'll get caught up on last week's episode. But for now, yeah, I mean, I think the trade deadline went fairly well for Boston. And let's see how Peak looks. I know Maroon's debut will be a little ways off, but I'm excited.
Yeah, what is the date on that, Chris? Do you know? Because wasn't it 4 to 6 weeks from when the surgery?
Yes, but I just saw a tweet from Ty Anderson earlier today where Minnesota had him skating, and Boston's medical team has actually drawn him off the ice and basically said, "You can't skate yet." So I know part of the move was putting him on LTIR retroactive to his surgery as well. So, because again, cap fuckery, whatever you want to call it, you're massaging the cap to make it work for you. That's all it is. But I don't know when his debut is planned for. I'm hoping, maybe 2 weeks out.
So we're looking closer to the 6 weeks then.
I think so. I would expect probably to use this next week to kind of figure out their own timeline for him and then say, okay, he's 1 or 2 weeks out. I feel like the medical staff doesn't want to put a time frame on when his debut would be until they have a good chance to work with him. So,
right.
All I would say is follow us, follow the people that you know and trust to provide solid information. And once something's out there, we'll know. And hopefully we'll have it by next week to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
otherwise, we should by then.
I would hope so. But otherwise, we got Peak to look forward to. I'm looking forward to see how they use him. Floorboard done for the season. We'll see if he makes a playoff run at all. But, let's see what Peak can do. Let's look at the positives here. And as far as I'm concerned, go Bees.
Go Bees.